Welcome to the Chasing Brighter podcast.
You're about to go on a journey of self-discovery as we chase a brighter you. Every single week, we will bring you new episodes that will cover everything from lifestyle and tips to more serious conversations about grief, life, and hardships.
Allow this show to be a reminder to always keep chasing a brighter version of you. Let's get into it.
Today, our episode is how parents can be allies to the LGBT plus community and raise their children to be allies. This is just another part in our series for Pride Month to celebrate diversity and to advocate for a more inclusive and accepting society. Kelly, a significant way that we can contribute to our goals of fostering inclusivity and acceptance is by being an ally to the LGBT plus community and raising our children to be allies as well. Today, we want to explore the importance of being an ally, debunk common misconceptions, and also just give practical advice and tips for our listeners on how to support and advocate for LGBTQ plus rights.
I just want to add that Jess and I did our own research on this and are pulling from our own experiences. And a lot of what we want to do here on Chasing Brighter is, while we do like to pull in experts and talk about things, there's a lot we can do as individuals to educate ourselves on these things. And so part of what we've done is pull together what we think are the real important key things to think about when it comes to supporting that LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, and creating a safe and inclusive home in your community.
Yeah.
And we're not experts. Always check our show notes for referrals and resources on where you can go. We're just your hosts, just trying to give you tips and tools and things that have helped us. And again, like Kelly said, we always encourage you to continue your education more on your own. And so I think sometimes we can be confused as to what it means to be an ally.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't know what the terminology we want to use is. So ally is someone who supports and stands up for rights and the dignity of LGBTQ plus individuals. It's somebody who is educating themselves about the challenges the LGBTQ plus community faces, speaking out against discrimination, and actively promoting equality and acceptance. And so when we talk about speaking out, it doesn't always mean you have to be you need to be an activist and you need to go to demonstrations. It's also about how you carry yourself and how you speak out against it in your daily life.
Yeah, just in communications with others, or I've had people tell me, I don't get they, them pronouns. It doesn't make any sense to me, blah, blah, blah. And so then there's an opportunity right there for you to educate someone and to say, this is why it matters. This is why representation matters, and have more one-on-one conversations. Or like we said, most of us have a social media platform. There's opportunities there for you to help provide support. And even in our home and some of the social circles that I've been a part of, I have had children be able to come out to me where they weren't able to come out at home. And they said, I could just tell that you would be cool to talk to about this. And so I think that's why it's important, the way that you talk in your house and the way that you represent yourself, that you can be a safe place for others as well. I think it's really important, like we said about the safe space, to amplify LGBTQ plus voices to drive social change. And our support can significantly impact the mental health and well-being of LGBTQ plus individuals by providing validation and reducing feelings of isolation. So like I said, when I've had someone feel comfortable to come out to me, then they know they can come talk to me. I'm a safe person. They can ask me questions. We can talk about things. I can direct them for places where they can be safe. And so that's why that's really important.
And I think that's also important, whether it's our conversation we had with Kathy or even in our own research, where it's very common for a lot of, especially teen, which our kids are growing up in those times where they are still looking to understand who they are and what their identity is. And some of the kids who might be your kids' friends they do not feel comfortable talking to their parents. Even if their parents are wholly loving, supportive, and really want to know, they don't feel safe talking to their parent. And so,
Like we
part of,
talked with Kathy Kolyakovo about it as
yeah,
well. Mhm.
yeah. And it's very common that is the case. So, being an ally is somebody who they feel like they can safely do that. And maybe that's their like dry run before they even come to their parent to
Yeah.
talk to them about these
Yeah.
things.
And we have kind of we want to debunk 3 myths about being an ally, right? So there is a myth that only people in the LGBTQ plus community need to worry about those issues, right?
Yep.
And this is a misconception that overlooks the fact that everyone benefits from a society where equality and acceptance are the norm. And allies can help foster environments where people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, can thrive. Like we want all people to thrive.
Another misconception is that you have to be an expert to be an ally. And that's where we kicked off this conversation, right? Is we are by no means experts. It doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers, but it's about your willingness to learn and
Hmm.
listen and support it. And that's exactly what we want. We do, Jessica and I, as well as what we want to inspire you to do as part of our Chasing Brighter community. And
Yeah.
it's okay to make mistakes and learn along the way, which is what we are all do. And that's kind of part of the human experience.
Yeah. And the final misconception is that being an ally is a one-time thing, right? It's not. Being an ally is a commitment. It involves continuous learning, unlearning biases, and standing up for LGBTQ plus rights. So like I was saying back 20 years ago, it was the LGBT community.
Yeah,
And
exactly. It's
now we
ever
know,
changing.
and the names changed. So you can say LGBTQIAP plus. There are a lot of, so it's just being open and reading and saying, okay, how am I going to define the community? And here it is why I'm using this particular acronym. I think
So,
it's,
you go ahead, Jess.
I was going to say, I think it's really important. Kelly and I are mothers. And so we talked about today, a lot of our listeners are parents. And I think it's really important to look at how you as a parent can be an ally. So not just you as an individual, but how that plays in a role on how you parent your children.
Yeah. And this is still, I think, all very new and fresh in that more and more, I believe that we are finding societies and communities being more open and accepting of these different groups. And so I think it's important for us to continue to support that and also for our kids to support that. And so part of that is us being a role model for them and really helping them be aware of these issues and understand them. And that is why it's important for us to educate ourselves on that, understanding what the issues are, the history, the terminology, whether it's using the good old Googs or even talking to your kids. Like sometimes they know things, but really understanding the struggles and the experiences, reading books. I think for us, our book club book for this month has been, to me, really eye opening for myself, which are All Boys Aren't Blue. And
Yeah.
there are a couple other books, and they're not like big, heavy books. I think they just help raise awareness. There's a couple documentaries. We talked in our previous episode about the Guide to Pride. If you haven't listened to it, you want to check it out. But one of the things we talked about is that there's a documentary from Netflix, which is the life and death of Marsha P. Johnson, who was one of the key, I think she was transgender, and she was one of the key people
Well, it was
who,
before transgender was a term. And so
yes.
they identified as a transvestite, but they were key and critical in leading protests for change.
Yep, which brought about the Gay Pride Parade and Pride Month, which is now something we have today.
I really want to read the book, This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. I think that will be a great book. Also, we can look at websites like you said, Google, but not just Google, but advocacy and organizations that are going to have appropriate and correct information for you, which is glad. I've talked before about HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, and also the Trevor Project. Another thing I want to say, like why that is really important for mental health for youth, right? When you support and affirm in your home, study shows that LGBTQ plus youth who have supportive families are less likely to experience depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. And so acceptance and support make a profound difference in your child's overall well-being. Also, the national rate of homelessness
That's what I was
for
going to say.
LGBTQ
Yes.
plus youth is 40%. Rates of people, there are people who, there's a big rate of people who believe it's better to have a dead child than a gay child, which is so horrific for me. I don't want my children to ever believe that they are not loved and accepted unconditionally. And I know, again, we talked about that in our episode with Kathy on just how love your kids, right? Love your kids and share that your children will always be loved in your home. And by being an ally and using inclusive language, you're going to help your children feel safe in their home.
Yes. And this is part of not only as parents doing that, but setting an example for other members of your family, maybe as well,
Yeah.
that maybe are having a harder time with this.
Mhm.
It's not that hard sometimes if you're a child who wants to be called something different, just call them something different. And what I realize, and even also All Boys Aren't Blue, the book, is it's a very fluid thing for a lot of kids who might be going through some sort of questioning. Exactly. And some of this is your kids, like this is evolving and changing. And so really supporting them all along the way. And sometimes they're trying something on and then they
Right.
realize it isn't because it's part of this journey.
And I like the idea of a spectrum too. And so who knows when I was trying to think about it myself, like when did I start becoming attracted to people and when that starts happening and what that felt like for me too. But I was going to say too, just talking about providing support and affirmation in your home. I remember when one of my children were fairly young and they came to me and they said, Mom, so-and-so came out as pan. And I think that they're way too young to be coming out at this age. And I said, okay, child, what if they're pan this month and next month they're not? What do you think about that? And he was like, that doesn't really matter. I was like, yeah, it doesn't really matter, does it? And so let's say you think they're too young and they say they're this week and next week they're that. Okay. And so I think it just was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, Mom, thanks. And it was just a very simple conversation about we can respect someone else's journey. We don't need to judge their journey. That's their journey. And let's support and provide information for that journey. We talked a little bit about, like we said, impact on mental health.
Yeah.
But how can we advocate and be visible as an ally and for our children? So I think,
Yeah, because just jumping into that,
yeah,
by doing that and by showing support, whether it's advocating in your
yeah,
community or your workplace, showing visible support. But
yeah,
this is about sending the message of acceptance and solidarity. And I think for a lot of kids in particular, but people in general, I shouldn't say kids because honestly, I think about my working relationships and stuff. People in general, that ability to feel accepted is huge. It's
yeah,
huge because they've spent a majority of their life maybe not feeling that way.
yeah. So you can be visible by participating in pride events, by displaying inclusive symbols. That sends a strong message of acceptance and solidarity. So something like simple for like visibility in my home. I call the space I'm in the Zen Den, and I have some signage up here. And I think I got these. I don't even know if it's from Etsy. And it says, in this space, we believe. And one of the things that we believe, it says that love is love. And so
Yeah.
that's very simple thing to have at home. I love a graphic tee. I talked about before. I'm going to get I ordered some pride tees. I love a rainbow. I love me a rainbow. And so I got a
Me
couple of
too.
pride tees where the owner is part of the LGBT plus Q community. And so that's way, right, that my kids, their friends, other people will see. And you can get shirts that say ally. I saw the shirt. I really loved it, but I didn't get it. But it said free mom hugs and showed a rainbow. And it was like, and I'm like, that's so cute.
Mhm.
Like there are people, it is very real that
Yes.
children, teens, people come out to their family and are kicked out of the family. They can be verbally abused, physically abused. It can be an unsafe situation for them. And so I think that's beautiful to put out there. Hey, I'm a mom and I love you for who you are and I'll give you a hug. I just think that
Yeah.
is beautiful.
Yeah. And I think just even modeling the behavior in your house,
Yeah.
that's what our job is as parents. So our kids they learn from us
Right.
and how we carry ourselves and what we say and
Right.
using more gender neutral language and just practices, right?
Yeah.
The even colors, pink and blue, or anything that sort of starts to put a gender bias
Yeah. And using,
towards
yeah. And
something. Yeah.
inclusive language. I remember it's so interesting how our kids are, right? My oldest is cisgender and she's a girl, and then I have two boys after her. And so when I was potty training my second, I kept all the potty training underwear and I had pink. No problem wearing like pink underwear. Then I have my third child, who's another boy, and I was like, here's underwear. And he was like, that's pink is for girls. And I remember being like, he wasn't even in school yet. Where the hell was this coming from? And I'm like, oh, pink is for everyone. And he was just really funny for a while. He had this thing about pink, and I was trying to explain anybody can wear pink. There's shirts that say real men wear pink. Our dad wears a lot of pink. I was like, Papa wears pink. And there was a little reel I saw. I reshared it on our stories, but there was a guy that talked about the history of gender and
Colors.
clothing. And I think he showed like Franklin Roosevelt wearing like a gown with lace all over it, like a picture when he was little, and how like actually there was like all these articles about how pink was for boys and blue was for girls. And it's how it's just such a societal construct that it didn't become pink for girls and blue for boys until the 80s. So isn't that funny that we like
Yeah.
act like it's a thing, but like little boys wore dresses
And
like
it
all
goes
the
back
time, not that
to
long ago,
it's
you
crazy
know?
because if you think even about the craziness of like, the gender reveal parties where it's
Yeah.
like what the biological gender dictates what your
That's where it starts. If you want to be
yeah.
inclusive, that's totally how it can start.
Yeah.
You did not reveal the gender of you didn't know the gender of both of your children, right? Before they
No,
were
I did
born.
not. No, I did.
I was very weird about everything being gender neutral for my eldest. I was so weird about it. Like the colors of her room were like yellow. And like I was like very trying to be very inclusive and non whatever about it. So I think you can another thing too is my youngest will be like, Mom, is it a boy or a girl? When we're out somewhere, Mom, is it a boy or a girl?
Mm,
I think I just say like, I don't know how they identify, bud. That's how I respond to it. I don't know. What would you
mhm.
say if your kid said that? I'd say you can't tell someone gender by looking at them.
Yeah.
Those are things I say.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't matter. And so it's figuring out how to that one of the things like is to just normalize it
Yeah.
in some way too, or just be like, ah, it doesn't matter and not make it like a big deal. Oh gosh, yeah, that's a good question. That's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Like, ah, who
Yeah.
cares? They're doing what they want to do. I've been
Yeah.
telling the kids that in a lot of ways where it is Pride month and we've seen some interesting choices of
Yeah.
clothing. Whoa, what is that? And it's you know what? They are living their best life. Let them be who they wanna be, and I think it
Yeah.
kinda comes from that place of just letting people do what makes them
Yeah. And I think like when you use like gender inclusive practices using general neutral language, like avoid assuming gender based on appearance, use terms like partner instead of husband or wife. One of the things I learned when I became a therapist was I would just ask, are you dating anyone? Like I don't just you have to be careful. So if you see a someone that appears to be a male to you and you say, "Oh, do you have a girlfriend?" That is heterosexist. And so just thinking about how you're presenting to people. And that's why
Yes.
when people talk about their pronouns, it's on my intake paperwork for work, it says, what are the pronouns you use? You can say, do you have any siblings? Instead of, do you have a brother or sister? Just thinking, how can your language be more inclusive?
Yes. And you want to raise a child who is going to be inclusive. If
Mhm.
that's like, we want to raise kids who are inclusive.
Yeah, I think as far as books and stuff, what we've done in our home for my children is I have a lot of Todd Parr books and I have the family book. And so it just describes all different kinds of families, even it's not even,
Oh,
I
yeah,
know
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
like part of being an ally, but just assuming that someone lives with their mom and their dad, right? Maybe they live with a grandma or a guardian or all that, like those books. And so Todd Parr has a lot of those books. We also have, we've talked before about Dr. Robbie's books
Yeah,
that,
that's what I was gonna say.
yeah.
Talking to
And
you about
yeah,
sex and talking about different sexes and like different also what is gosh, I'm like drawing a blank here. But just like some people like same sex, some people like opposite sex, what those words are, like early on,
yeah, there's a
making it
great,
very normal
yeah,
again, keeping it normal.
yeah, there's a little children's book I got for Gio, and it's a little boy, and he's like trying on his dad's suit, and he's this doesn't feel right, and he tries on his pants. He's this doesn't feel right, and he's trying on. He's like running around the house in underwear, and it's like comical. And he's this doesn't feel right, and then he puts on a dress, and he was like, "This is what I want to wear," and that's like the end of the book, just simple like that. And then also, Gabby read a book which was so beautiful. We like cried, and it's called Lily and Duncan, and it's about a family that like next door, the child that moves in is transgender and has moved to that town to be living as a female. And it's just it's so beautiful of the transgender child's father having a difficult time accepting it, that his son is transitioning to be a girl. And it's like these two kind of outcasts become friends, and it's just a really beautiful book. One of the reasons you and I love books is I think books help you to learn about the world and become more compassionate. So maybe when you hear the first person narrative of a
Yeah.
child who's struggling with that and really hear what's going on and hear how they feel with the father struggling. And in the book, it's such a great book, but I don't, and the child, I think it's Lily. I'm sorry, I don't want to remember which one's Lily and which one's Duncan, but of their narrative and they're in therapy and the parents are in therapy. So it was a really great book. And I think Gabby was reading that when she was like 12, right? So then that gives her compassionate understanding.
Yeah.
So that's why I think books are so great. And then I think what's beautiful, and that's where I think the LGBT plus community has made so many strides, is there's so much more representation on TV now that you're just seeing that more and more, but that just that you're looking at the shows you're watching and seeing how they're
I love it.
representing
Like
everybody.
there's a CBS show called Trackers. It's like Maine, whatever. The guy like tracks people and he lives in like his van or whatever. He's
Right,
living van life, Jess. I don't know if you've
right.
seen it. You might be
No.
jealous. Have you seen it?
Okay. No, but
But
I think
his handler is a lesbian and it's
yeah.
like an older lesbian couple. And I'm just so happy to see the diversity of not
Yeah,
only based on like your skin color, but also that your
right. All
lifestyle preference or whatever.
representation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that really matters. I know we talked more about that when we talked about Shonda Rhimes, but just how powerful representation is.
Yeah.
And just obviously, if you want to be if you want an ally and have an inclusive home, like you would speak out against discrimination, teach your children to recognize and speak out against homophobic or transphobic comments and actions.
Yeah.
I know I talked about this a long time ago, but I remember Dominic was like 6 and he was at baseball practice and he came back and he was like, "Mom, I don't understand. They're making fun of so and they were saying he threw like a girl." And he was just like, "I don't understand because Gabby's a girl and she's really strong." And so then you can have those conversations about when your kids say, "Oh, they said this, what does that mean?" And you can just say, "In our home." So in that child's home, this might be going on, but in our home, we believe that girls are strong and women are strong. Just having those conversations when they come
Yeah.
back.
And it's really hard being a Gen Xer. We grew up with all that. Screaming like a girl is one of the things that we try to figure out a different way to talk about things because things get so associated with gender when they don't need to be. Um,
Yes. Yes, we were yeah, totally. Yeah, we were just talking about that too. It's funny, but
yeah. So I think for that,
yeah.
like speaking out against discrimination, and that is again,
Yeah.
everyday life, figuring out ways to set an example and lead by example for your kids on those things,
Yes.
as well as broader conversations when you see things happening besides what's happening in your home.
Yeah. I remember when Gabby was little, she was obsessed with princesses and she would always have these little princes you could change. They had like little rubber clothes and you could change their clothes. And she'd be like, and then they're going to marry me, a prince. And I would be like, or a princess or whatever. And I would be like, whatever she chooses to do. And there are these fairy tales a friend gave me, and they're alternative fairy tales. And in the end, I don't know if her name's Cinderella, but Cinderella like chooses to be alone. Like instead of having all these fairy tales where a boy and a girl always get together, there are alternative books too. But I think being an ally to the LGBTQ plus community and raising children to be allies, it requires effort, right? It requires effort, education, and a commitment to equality. But if we can do that as humans, as parents, we can help create a more inclusive and accepting society where everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, feels validated and supported and loved. And our actions, no matter how small they may seem, can make a significant impact in the lives of the LGBTQ plus people and contribute to a more just and compassionate world. Yes.
Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe so you can hear our latest episodes as soon as they drop.
If you loved today's episode, share with a friend. Come visit us on Instagram or Facebook. Make sure to give us a follow. We have lots of giveaways. If you want to know more about Kelly and I, read our blogs, find more tips, tools, and resources, check that out at chasingbrighter.com. Thanks.